Hi, my name is Tori and I am a doctor of physical therapy who specializes in pelvic dysfunction, which means I treat things that can go wrong around the pelvis, and this includes the different types of pelvic organ prolapse. I recently made a much more comprehensive video about prolapse, talking about the different types, common symptoms, treatment options, the grading system, and why I don't think that lots and lots of Kegels is always the best intervention. If any of those topics interest you and you'd like to learn more, I will link to that video here as well as in the description below. However, after creating that video, I remembered that I used to get lots and lots of questions in the clinic concerning sex and prolapse. Questions like, is it safe to have sex with a prolapse? Is having sex going to make my prolapse worse? What's it gonna feel like for me and for my partner? And what positions are best? So I wanted to make a video addressing those three topics: safety, what to expect, and best positions, in order to help women and people with vaginas who are navigating prolapse gain a better understanding of their bodies, what's happening during sex with a prolapse, and what options they have to optimize and better enjoy their future sexual experiences. We are going to be talking a lot about heterosexual sex in today's video, but do know that these concepts apply to vaginal penetration in general. And as always, timestamps and links to any resources mentioned today can be found in the description below. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's begin by talking about safety. There can be a lot of incredibly valid fears surrounding sex with a prolapse because the person with the prolapse doesn't want to hurt themselves or to make their condition worse. The good news is, in almost all cases, vaginal penetration is completely safe, as it will not cause harm to the organ or organs involved. They can very easily move out of the way, nor will it affect the severity of the prolapse. It actually encourages the organs to move up, not down, and a finger or a penis-shaped toy can't pull any of the organs further out. Their shape simply doesn't allow for it. Hearing that it's safe to have sex with a prolapse is one thing, but actually being able to visualize anatomically what's happening during sex with a prolapse really helps to bring these points home. So let's do a quick female pelvic anatomy review and then demonstrate why vaginal penetration with a prolapse is almost always safe. So this is a woman who is standing in this position and she has been cut down the center. You can see her pubic bone is here towards the front of her body and her tailbone is here towards the back of her body. Then we have the three pelvic organs sitting on top of their respective tubes. Her bladder is here, living on top of her urethra. Her uterus is here, living on top of her vagina, and her rectum is here, living on top of her anal canal. You can also appreciate her pelvic floor, represented here in red. The pelvic floor is a group of muscles that live beneath the pelvic organs. You can imagine them as almost a hammock connecting from pubic bone to tailbone that help to support the organs that live above them. Pelvic organ prolapse occurs when the bladder, uterus, or rectum start to descend down through the vagina. The bladder can move down and backwards and pouch into the front wall of the vaginal canal. The uterus can move straight down through the vaginal canal, and the rectum can move down and forwards and pouch into the back wall of the vaginal canal. Now, with these visuals in mind, we can revisit what was said earlier. In almost all cases, vaginal penetration is completely safe, as it will not cause harm to the organ or organs involved. They can easily move out of the way, nor will it affect the severity of the prolapse. It actually encourages the organs to move up, not down, and a finger, penis or penis-shaped toy can't pull any of the organs further out. Their shape simply doesn't allow for it. The only time that I would be concerned about someone with a prolapse having vaginal sex, outside of the few cases that are true medical emergencies, is if that person reported other worrisome symptoms like bleeding or pain, either during or independent of sex. Sometimes if someone is using an intravaginal supportive device, like a pessary or an over-the-counter support, the prolapsed organ's tissue can get irritated and bleed. I'd want that person to abstain while her tissue healed. And sometimes in response to prolapse, the pelvic floor, that hammock group of muscles that we were talking about earlier that connect from pubic bone to tailbone and support the organs that live above them, will contract in order to give the organs even more support and forget to let go and almost get stuck in a sort of pelvic floor spasm. That spasm can cause painful sex, and I'd probably want that person to abstain while her pelvic floor spasm was treated until it healed. If you think that might be happening to you, know that it is very, very treatable, especially under the guidance of a pelvic physical therapist. If you are interested in seeking that guidance, I will link to a directory to help you find a provider near you in the description below. So bleeding and pain aren't normal during sex with a prolapse, but what is? What can someone having sex with a prolapse expect to feel, and what will their partner feel? Unfortunately, there is no single answer to that question. It does vary from person to person. However, there does seem to be a pattern that correlates with the severity of the prolapse. People with a more mild to moderate prolapse, where the organ or organs involved stay inside of the vaginal canal and do not protrude past the vaginal opening, are much more likely to not notice their prolapse during sex. Whereas people with more moderate to severe prolapse, where the organ or organs involved do protrude past the vaginal opening, are more likely to experience some discomfort during sex. We'll talk more about different positions that can help to decrease and eliminate that discomfort later on in the video. However, using lubricant and making sure that the pelvic floor is relaxed before having sex can both help immensely. And that's because of something called the mind-body connection. In the scientific world, we have broken sex down into a very simplistic cycle: desire, arousal, and orgasm. Desire is something that we feel. It originates in our minds. It's the yearning and excitement surrounding an upcoming sexual encounter. Arousal is something that we experience. It originates in our bodies. It's blood flow to our genitals and increased lubrication in our vaginas and that sort of thing. You can imagine the sort of mind-body state that encourages desire and arousal. It's an open and relaxed and playful sort of place. With that being said, I'm sure you could imagine how certain emotional and cognitive experiences that we're having could interfere with that ideal mind-body place. For instance, feeling self-conscious about prolapse, or feeling fear that you might hurt yourself, or feeling worry that your partner won't have a fulfilling experience. Those incredibly valid feelings don't really lend themselves to relaxation and openness in the mind, and they tend to manifest as tension or rigidity in the body. And so becoming aware of that relationship and taking some pressure off of your body by making sure that you're well lubricated and releasing tension that your body may be carrying, especially in your pelvic floor, can really help to make a positive difference. I will link to a guided pelvic floor relaxation routine that I have on my channel here as well as in the description below. In that video, I review how to use your breath in order to relax your pelvic floor. There's a timestamp in the description of that video so you can skip right to it. Using that pelvic floor relaxation breath work is a really easy and super helpful tool that you could implement before having sex. Sometimes instead of discomfort, someone with a prolapse will experience decreased sensation during sex, have difficulty achieving an orgasm, or they can achieve an orgasm but the strength of that orgasm is diminished. None of that means that you are hurting yourself or that sex is bad for you. Instead, that usually indicates that the pelvic floor has lost something called tone, and that is something that can be restored with pelvic physical therapy. Again, if you'd like to find a pelvic physical therapist in your area and seek out that therapy, I have a link to a directory for you in the description below. Finally, depending on the prolapse, someone may experience incontinence or urine or fecal leakage during sex. That does not mean that sex is hurting you in any way, and a really easy way to remedy this issue is to make sure that you empty your bladder and empty your bowels before having sex. And this is something that can also be improved and treated with pelvic physical therapy. Alright, but what about your partner? Since we're talking about heterosexual sex, what can he expect to feel? Again, there is no single answer to this question. However, generally speaking, women are much more likely to notice and be able to feel their prolapse during sex than their male partner is. Based on the conversations that I've had in the clinic, I would guess that the likelihood of your male partner being able to notice and feel prolapse correlates to the severity of the prolapse. Where a partner is more likely to notice something, be able to feel something different if the prolapse protrudes outside of the vaginal opening during sex. But this, and more importantly, any feelings of discomfort that the person with the prolapse might be experiencing during sex can be mitigated with different sexual positions. So I have 3 sexual positions that I often recommend to people in the clinic for improved comfort and increased pleasure that I would like to review with you. The first 2 use gravity in order to encourage the organ or organs involved to ascend to a more optimal position inside of the pelvis. And the third limits how deeply someone can be penetrated, which can be really helpful. So option 1 is a modified missionary position, where the woman is on her back with some pillows underneath her buttocks. I love this position because it uses gravity to encourage the organ or organs to move up, to ascend into a more optimal position. And the woman is supported, which makes it much easier to relax her pelvic floor and surrounding musculature. Now, if you can imagine the organs and how gravity would affect them in this position, it might be the case that this position is the most effective for uterine prolapse or rectocele, since the uterus would move up out of the vaginal canal, and the rectum would move up and backwards away from the vaginal canal. Whereas the bladder moves up, but gravity still encourages it to move backwards into the vaginal canal. If this is the case, a second option is a supported kneeling position or a supported prone position, where the woman is lying on her stomach with some pillows underneath of her pelvis. I love this position because it also uses gravity to encourage the organ or organs to move up, to ascend into a more optimal position, and the woman is supported, which again makes it much easier to relax her pelvic floor and surrounding musculature. Now, if you can imagine the organs and how gravity would affect them in this position, it might be the case that this position is the most effective for uterine prolapse or cystocele, since the uterus would move up and out of the vaginal canal, and the bladder would move up and forwards, away from the vaginal canal. Whereas the rectum does move up, but gravity still encourages it to move forwards into the vaginal canal. Finally, a third option is side lying with your partner behind you. This option doesn't use gravity to change the position of the prolapse, but it does limit the depth at which your partner can penetrate you, which can be really helpful. And you're supported, which makes it easier to relax your pelvic floor and surrounding musculature. You can also add another pillow in between your legs for increased support. Above all else, do not hesitate to communicate openly and honestly with your partner or your partners. Sex should feel comfortable, enjoyable, and pleasurable for both of you. So if something doesn't feel right, or if you think that changing positions would be better for you, or anything like that, tell your partner. It is always okay to prioritize your body and her needs, especially when you're healing. I hope that this video helps you do just that. And on that note, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down and let me know what I can do to improve in the future. Feel free to comment absolutely anything down below, content suggestions, feedback, questions you have, really anything. I do try really hard to read and respond to all of my comments. Don't forget to check me out on Instagram, and finally, if you want to see more content from me, please do consider subscribing to the channel. I make videos about pelvic things, like today's video, and I also make videos about life things. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.